Welcome, everyone, to Elevate with V. So excited to be here with you. This podcast was inspired by my own healing journey. I aspire to share amazing healers and coaches to keep helping us to elevate on our journey so we can keep aligning with our soul's calling and gifts. I can't wait to introduce my guest today, Matthew. I had the pleasure of connecting with him on Facebook during the pandemic time through my dear friend Michael. And Matthew, I just love your authenticity, your courage, your transparency, and I always feel your genuine desire to share your highs and your lows, to always remind people that they're not alone and that there's always support. And I'm so excited to learn more about you and your journey today. So, welcome, Matthew.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yay! And I can't wait to get into it today, but I did want to also share his official bio. And Matthew Stapley is a naturally gifted, full sensory psychic medium, public speaker, minister, and teacher serving people and communities worldwide. I love it.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
so, as you know, Matthew, this show is highlighting healing journeys and how we have each navigated through quite a few storms to get to our silver linings. So, I wanted to ask you what event or events kind of led you into stepping into your own personal healing journey?
I think it was a great conspiracy on part of the universe because really there were so many different things. And like many people, I spent a whole lot of time trying to be perfect and trying to project, maybe even an image of perfection on some crazy level. And I think my healing journey really started when everything fell apart. I had left a relationship. I experienced a lot of heartbreak. Illness showed up, but it all came in different stages. So I don't think there was like one moment, where everything got underway. But I will say there were some really big moments that, took almost everything away from me, I think, in a sense. So I was left with me and myself and had to go within and figure out who I really was and who I was in relationship or in relation to the world around me. And that was um really hard. It was really challenging, but still a work in progress, I think, like many of us.
Yes, I love that. So I know you've said that there's many, and I know many of us, and I know people are also familiar. Not everybody likes the term, but dark night of the soul.
Yeah, it's a
Is
great
there
term.
any particular one that you would say like really pushed you through and helped you kind of like really step into some of those things that you needed to like work on and clear out? Because, the whole thing is all of these experience as challenging, as difficult, and, there's so many other adjectives that I could use, right? But it's about those things turn into our purpose. They turn into our gifts. So anything kind of connected to that you would like to share would be amazing.
Sure. So I think one of the big ones for sure was my health started to decline like pretty rapidly. I guess it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I really felt like there was something wrong, physically something wrong, mentally and emotionally something was wrong, even like at an energy level, I felt like something was wrong. And I went to my doctors and I went to everybody. I went to every doctor, healer, witch doctor, shaman, whatever I could find for answers. And I think one of the hardest parts of that whole process was finding a doctor who was going to actually listen because I have like disabilities and learning disabilities and autism and things like that. Everyone took the symptoms and just put it on that. And so but I knew within myself that, hey, there's actually like something wrong. And so I finally found a doctor who was going to listen and who agreed to help me. And she found out that I had like a really unusual blood disorder that was causing a lot of the symptoms that I was having. And so I think that started a huge process and unraveling, I think. And I didn't realize it at the time. But I was already kind of like stuck at home with like, lots of anxiety and all these physical symptoms. So I wasn't really even able to go to see a doctor in person. And so I learned the very hard way how crazy the navigating of the medical system can be when you are somebody who is kind of coloring outside the lines, so to speak. And so, going through all of that and having to really ask for help and kind of be at the mercy of other people and the universe, it was a very humbling experience. It was something that, um, you know, I think created an arena for me to see all of the imbalances within myself, but also the imbalances within the world around me, and the world around all of us. And so I think that was a really challenging, very eye-opening struggle, I think. And it is something that brought me to a place within myself where I had two choices, like survival or not, survival or not. And I had to learn how to do some kind of scary things for myself, and I had to learn to ask for help and really advocate and really use my voice. And I had to learn to find out what was in me that made it hard to use my voice in the beginning. And so it brought all these things together. It is very much a work in progress still. I think silver linings for me, they aren't a destination, so much as something that comes in when we need it the most, right? And so I was speaking to a friend earlier today, and she said, I just want to be happy. And I said, that's unrealistic. I think what's realistic is feeling fulfillment or being content. And that is something that I personally shoot towards. And that's something that I've been finding through this healing journey, and realizing as well that when we let our walls down and we really let people in, even to the more grotesque parts of our lives, we realize that we're all really the same, or we're all going through something, or we've gone through something. And I think that can form a beautiful community, and that fellowship in itself is profoundly healing. And so, I think I've discovered the power of community in a very, very big survival level, even, which is beautiful. It's beautiful, hard, but beautiful.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I love that because I really do feel that that's something that you reflect a lot, which I think is so amazing about, really building community. And I think you've really done an amazing job of that. And, kind
Thank
of
you.
what I shared in the intro is, you share every aspect, like you'll be like, hey, not having a very good day today. How are you all doing? So I love that you are constantly reflecting to people that it's completely okay where you are. Today, you could be on like this crazy high and enjoy every moment of it. And then tomorrow, you could be like, okay, I don't even want to get out of bed today. Like, I just want to just stay here, just not do anything. And the truth is, all of it is okay. Right. And
Very, very much so.
yeah, and I think that's so important. And the other thing that I do appreciate is that, you're always trying to offer different, I don't know for a better word, but like tools, right? Or
Yeah,
resources to people. And I know that you've created a couple of things, so we will definitely get into that as well, because I know that you have, over the course of time, developed some beautiful tarot oracle decks. You have a book, so we'll definitely touch on that. But I kind of want to take you
sure.
back a little bit. So, what was a little bit of your childhood like? I'm very curious. What was Matthew as a young child?
So, it's interesting. It's an interesting question. So, I had well, sort of a crappy childhood in a sense. But when most people think of a crappy childhood, they think of their bad family or something. And I would say my family was the only reason that I got through my younger years, because they're amazing and they still are amazing. We're all very, very close, and we always have been. But the school side of things, like the academic side, the social side, all of that was really, really hard. I mean, growing up with Tourette syndrome and learning disabilities and neurodivergence and all of that was really, really challenging. And I think that, for those of us who go through a journey like that, we're kind of made to feel different and not in a good way from a very young age by our teachers and our classmates and our society. And I think that navigating that was really, really challenging. And it was, not even until a few years ago that I finally began to make peace with all of that stuff, all of those childhood traumas and differences, and and finding empowerment, even looking back at it, to times where, where I did the wrong thing, but my adult self was like, "Good for you, that's awesome." So I think. Childhood challenging for sure at a school level, academic level, amazing at a family level, hard at an intrapersonal level. I was always a kid who thought big and thought about everybody and everything in the world. And I was always very curious. I wanted to know everything about everything. And so I think that curiosity also kind of got me through a lot of that. Um, Outside of that, I was always described as like very compassionate and loving and like kind of an adult in a kid's body and creative, and things like that, very mature in some ways. And so yeah, I think I was, I was a weird kid probably. And then we throw the psychic stuff in there and it gets really crazy, right? So like I think yeah, I was one of those kids where teachers either really liked me or were like almost afraid of me. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. You literally led into what I was going to ask you next. And, it's really interesting. I didn't know that you had, some of these other things, challenges in terms of health. And, I can't even imagine how you were navigating at that time. I mean, now I know there's so many more resources.
Yes, big
So
time.
it's like, how did you even manage? I mean, I'm so grateful because so many of us that are on this journey haven't always had the support of our parents. So the fact that
Mm.
you had parents and family that truly supported you, I can't even imagine how, it's just such a gift to have that.
Very much so. And my family, I would if I had to pick a word that really hits home for me to describe it, it's acceptance. And the second word would be support, and just being right in my corner every step of the way. I was very lucky to have parents that in the late 80s and the 90s were so ahead of their time in terms of the way that they thought about things. And I really don't think I would be here still if it wasn't for my family.
That's so beautiful, Matthew. So you touched on it, and I was going to ask you about this anyway. So, you are a psychic medium, fully sensory.
Mhm.
So, were you aware pretty early on that you had gifts?
Yeah, I think so. My mom was very aware, apparently from like 2 or 3 years old. I became aware at about 8 years old. That's where I really was like, okay, now I'm like really weird, Um, and yeah, my dad was traveling in Thailand, and he called to say hi to me and my mom and my brother. And I got on the phone with him and I described the room he was sitting in over the phone to him without having any knowledge of really where he was, other than that he was in a place called Thailand. And yeah, he freaked him right out. And it was all like pretty detailed descriptions of, the room he was in, the things that were sitting beside him on the table, right down to a fountain that was outside that he didn't even know was there until I made him go and look. So it was very, very intense. After that, it just started to happen more and more and more. And I started getting visitations from people who had passed away, and I started seeing aura colors around people. And, insight would come and I would get feelings and visions and all kinds of stuff. So for me, it was around 8 years old where like it was a really big eye opener. But then the following, I don't know, almost 10 years, it was just like one new experience after another, after another, after another.
Wow, amazing. So you said that your mom sensed this about you when you were like 2 years old or something. So,
Yeah.
um, is she someone who's also pretty gifted and tuned in, or?
Um, I think so. I think she was. She's passed on now, but I think she was. She was a very empathic person, and her mom and dad, they came from families that were very tuned in psychically and were into healing work, and card reading and all kinds of stuff like that. So she kind of grew up with a strong interest in it anyway. But I guess apparently before me and my brother were born, she went and got a reading, and that psychic predicted that she would have a son with very blue eyes that could see things nobody else could see. And he would, that I would be a psychic or a medium or something. And so I guess for her, she had kind of like a heads up. I don't know that she put much behind it at the time, but as I got older and as a teenager, having even more intense experiences, she told me that story, which I thought was very cool.
Amazing. So, that's beautiful that she was already kind of like tuned in. So, was there sort of like, how did you like nurture those skills, or did you not even need to do anything? And it's just like as you were tapping in, like more and more things opened up, or she's like, oh, honey, let's like do something, or let me, encourage you to like expand on these skills. Was it something like that, or was it just your kind of just
No,
putting up?
it just kind of happened. Yeah. Like I remember at 8 years old. So there was the remote viewing experience with my dad in Thailand. And then things got kind of scary for me. Like I would lie in bed at night and I would see all these shadows standing in the room around me. And it was very overwhelming. So they actually brought me to a psychiatrist to try to get me like medicated so I could at least sleep. And so I was like on prescription level sleeping pills at 8 years old, just trying to turn it off. And so yeah, for me it was not like a super fun it was not a super fun experience. But as I got older and I started kind of being able to do it on purpose for people, read for them, my mom thought it was really cool. And so she was always encouraging me. At that time my dad didn't really think much of it. I think he was just way busy with work and didn't really understand it. I think he thought it was too weird. But then yeah, so as I got older and people started offering me money to do readings for them and things like that, she became kind of like the number one supporter. And so I would work psychic fairs and things like that, and she would be at the front table signing people up for readings, and we'd travel together doing that. So she was very supportive. But I remember when I started doing platform work, which is where you're working with an audience of people rather than one person, she would never watch. She would go for a walk, go get coffee. And I asked her, like, why won't you come and watch? And she said, oh, Matthew, no, I can't. It's just my anxiety gets way too high. I can't watch you do this. It was always really fun, though. We always had a good time.
Oh, wow. I love that. So, did you, I mean, obviously now you've shared that you were medicated a little bit because you're like,
Yeah.
listen, I'm not ready for all of this. There's certain parts
Yeah.
I'm ready for, others I'm not. So, were you able to figure out pretty quickly how to turn things off and on? So, for example, like if you're someone who's already fully sensory at a really young age, you're going to school, you're doing other things. I mean, were you just seeing things around you like all the time? Like, what would you do? How would you
Yeah.
kind of like shut it down or say, no, I don't want to see this? Like, were you able to do that or not really?
Not really, no. In fact, it wasn't until like when I became a teenager, I was able to kind of turn it on and off more. But as a young kid, I remember sitting in class and there being this like ghost beside me, right? And I knew he wasn't alive, but he looked so real, and he was wearing a janitor's uniform, and he would just sit beside me the whole class every day and just kind of made me feel comfortable, actually. Like he was a very caring presence for me. And a bunch of things like that happened. But when I was a teenager, it kind of like, yeah, I was able to work with it a little bit better until I was 19. And when I was 19, I had a car accident and a brain injury. And on the other side of that, I could not turn it off. It was so unbelievably, unmanageably overwhelming that I had to take all kinds of tranquilizers, sedatives during the day, even because I was just hearing things and seeing things. And it was just way, way too much. But eventually I learned to control it. And it took about 10 years probably of really working on learning how to turn it on and off, before I was able to kind of like be a little bit more functional. In that time, the medication helped me to cope with it. So even though I was still seeing things and feeling things, I wasn't as overwhelmed because I was, constantly basically half asleep. So it was very challenging. Now I can kind of turn it on and off, which is great, but it was definitely a hard road to learning that.
Wow. So, were you aware of, since you were able to see and experience a lot of things, were you aware of guides and having support around you? I know you just mentioned like the janitor who would be like
Yeah.
sitting next to you, but did you have other guides that you're like, oh, yeah, I've got like the support system around me?
No, no. In fact, I at first had no idea that. So even though I had mediumistic experiences, I didn't really think of myself as a medium at the time, which is crazy because I was doing readings professionally. I considered myself a psychic. And then after the car accident, and I'd already been working professionally at that point. After the car accident, like I didn't need any tools. I didn't need anything. Before that, I would still use tarot, even though I didn't need it. It would kind of help. After the car accident, that's when I really became aware, like within a few years, became aware that I was getting my information from like the other side because people's loved ones started to come forward more and more and more and more. And in fact, I would say there was like probably a 2 week period where everyone had been coming to see me for my ability to predict the future, sometimes right down to the dates of events. And then within a 2 week period, all these people's loved ones started showing up like crazy, and it shifted. And then everyone started coming for that, and it was this weird shift that happened. But I think that started to happen once I got more comfortable with managing my own energy and managing the energy, of this ability. So yeah, it's been it's been a journey for sure.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. So, talking of which, I know that you have created, I believe, is it two tarot decks?
Two
Am I
oracle
correct?
decks and
Two
a
oracle
tarot deck.
decks. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow. So, what kind of inspired you to do that? And when did the first one come out?
Well, it was something that I wanted to do for a long time. Like I had always thought it would be cool, but I didn't know how to do it. Like it looked so complicated to me, like just outrageously complicated. Then I came across this website called the Game Crafter, and where you could like create individual cards, and they had kind of like the dimensions, so you knew how big they had to be, and you could create a booklet and you could upload them all. And I sat down and I thought, I'm just going to try creating a card, right? And I'm very creative and I love art. And so I thought, well, I'll use like digital art at first. So I, hand did digital art and an illustration. And then I was like, hey, that card's not too bad. I'll do another one. And so I did. And after about the fourth card, I was so sold on it that that's all I did for the following few weeks was I created this oracle deck, and I had a great time doing it. And I, wasn't even doing it to try to make money. I just wanted to do it because I thought it would be fun. And I put it up on GameCrafter and it started selling like crazy. It was amazing. So then I thought, well, I think I'll create another deck. And so I carved out like a couple of weeks in my schedule, and I thought I'm doing absolutely nothing for the next 2 weeks except for creating this card deck. And that was the Lantern of the Shadow. That was the second one. The first one was Lantern of the Soul. So it took me 2 weeks. I had it all done and ready to go, and the proofs were ordered. And that was cool. And then the third one, I thought, well, I have two Oracle decks. Maybe I'll do a tarot deck. And I thought, I want to do a tarot deck that is easy to interpret for people, where they don't even have to know the meaning of the cards in order to get an interpretation. So I created the emotive tarot. And the reason it's called that is all of the colors on the cards with the illustrations are all supposed to evoke an emotion that aligns with the meaning of the card. And so I created that. And that one I worked at day and night, about 8 hours a day, and I finished it in 1 week. It was the like craziest thing I've ever probably done. But they've been selling really well, and to me that it was amazing with the first deck because a lot of us do live readings and things like that on Facebook. The first time I saw a reader use one of my card decks on a live, I almost fell off my chair. I was so blown away, and like my heart was exploding with all this joy, and it was a feeling that I've never had before in my entire life, that people I had never even met were using these decks. And it just brought me a joy that I can't even really put words to. It was the coolest thing ever.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And one of the things I did want to mention is because I can't remember exactly, but I think we might have connected in 2021 or something like that. And what I loved
Mhm.
is there were so many of us, right, that were
Yeah.
tuning into you, into Michael, into Pam, into Windwalker. Like there were all of you, and you were all so incredibly supportive of each other. And I think that was a really important thing to also show is that it's not about, oh, well, I'm just doing my own thing here and this person's doing their own thing. It's like there was so much genuine love and support. And I think that was very inspiring for a lot of us because it's such a great message to put out there because I truly feel that so many things are shifting in our world. And I think this aspect of everyone kind of like sharing and co-creating and collaborating is such a beautiful thing and such an important message to get out. And, I remember a couple of people that I was in their lives like, and today I'm going to be showcasing Matthew's deck. And then they would open it
Oh,
up and it was just so amazing, right? Because I know you would pop into them as well sometimes. So it
yeah.
was just really beautiful. And I could just imagine the joy of something that you created because it completely came from like just your genuine love and desire to share something. And do you feel like this was very much channeled? Like, would you just sit and say, okay, what I'm going to create? Like, what's my theme? And then the inspiration would just keep flowing in?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened actually. Like, especially for the first two decks especially were like that, where, right down to like the design of the card, right down to like I felt it out, I guess you could say, the whole way through. Every card was right down to like little tiny details in the cards were all intentional. And there's elements of the first deck and the first two decks especially where there was like numerology hidden in the cards, and things like that. Just the different design elements were very aligned with different elements, and different numbers and all kinds of stuff. So every part of it was intentional. I wanted the cards to impart more than just what was written on them. I wanted them to have a specific frequency, and I feel like it worked. It worked well.
I love that so much. That's beautiful. So I wanted to ask you, I know that not too long ago, you also put out a book. Would you like
I
to talk a
did.
little bit about what that is all about?
Sure. So, the book is called The Little Book of Wise and Powerful Thoughts. And it was so much fun to write. Like, I loved every second that I worked on that book. And basically, it's a great book for people like me who have zero attention span. I don't want to read, like tomes of wisdom. I want like a couple of sentences. And at first, I felt almost bad about publishing a book that each page was like one thought, right? And I felt kind of weird about it. But every time I had tried to sit down and write a book that wasn't like a novel or something like a storybook, I couldn't do it. I would get a couple of sentences in, and then that was it. And I think it was because I used to be able to write forever and like pages and pages and pages. But working in social media for so long, you have to learn how to take like huge concepts and put them into a couple of sentences. And so I could never undo that. Like I was never able to like reverse that process. And then a really amazing friend of mine, who's an author, a very well-known author, in fact, and she said to me, why use more words than what you have to? Anyway. And then another friend said, nobody wants to read a whole book. They want, like, this is perfect. They can just read a sentence or two and get on with their lives. And so that kind of took the weird feeling away. And I realized that actually this is very accessible for people. And anybody who's like me, who has a different working brain, like who can't read for long periods of time, that's great. It's perfect for them. So I kind of reclaimed something within myself in the process of being comfortable with what I had published. It was kind of strange. Usually, I think people do it the other way around, where they get an idea and they are excited about it, and then they publish it, and then it's great. For me, I got an idea, I did it, I published it. I was a little like, nah, no one's gonna like this, and then realized that actually, no, this is quite positive. This is quite valuable. And it shifted my relationship with myself and my work in a very positive way.
I love that so much. And that's so true, Matthew. I know that I struggled in the traditional system because I'm a very
Mhm.
like visual learner and
Yeah.
audio learner. And so it was just so challenging for me, all these like heavy books and like you got to read
Yeah,
all
me
this stuff.
too.
I mean, I got lost. I don't know how I made it through with the grades that I did because it's completely not how I learn. And, it's that sort of like, I hate to say it, but like that cookie cutter way of
Yes.
everybody's the same, and it's like just discovering that there's so many different ways that people can do things and so many different ways that we each resonate with things. So I love that because I'm definitely that person, like, please don't give me books, and if you are, it's got to be audio, and it's got to be interesting or I'm going to be lost, you know? So I love
Same.
that. Yeah.
Same. I'm like, if it does it come on DVD? If it comes on DVD, I can work with, like, I love movies and documentaries and like, all of that. But yeah, I'm like you, I've got a tough time reading books. I like textbooks a lot because they're like compartmentalized, pieces of information, which is awesome. But big long books. I think the last time I really read a whole book, I was probably about 20. So that's 18 years ago. That's probably the last time I sat down and read an actual full-on book. And ever since, then I just am basically like, does it come in a song, a movie, a TV show, a documentary, an audiobook, like something, something else? But
100%.
they do now though. They have all kinds of formats for information. It's awesome.
Yes, and I'm so grateful for that because, I mean, I do think it shifts how people learn, right? And how we take in
Yeah.
information. And, I feel bad sometimes because I'm like, oh my God, I learned all this stuff and I don't remember much of it because the way that it was presented to me was not how my mind could absorb it, So,
Yeah,
like all
totally.
these years that we've been like doing all of these things, I would literally remember like studying even in college, and I would fall asleep and I'd open my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm on the same page. But now I've already forgotten. So I got to start again, So I just remember like
Oh,
moments like
totally.
that.
Same here, like, and it's hard because I would love to go do like a degree in philosophy or something, but I know that that equals like 50 billion words worth of reading. So I'm just not, it's just not going to happen. All of my educational background has been health sciences related for the most part. And so that kind of reading I'm great with. I could read biology textbooks all day long or chemistry or whatever, but not so much the super, crazy in-depth stuff.
I love that. And it's such a great thing as we're talking. I'm like, oh, no wonder I went to art school because I figured that would be much more my lane than anything else. So
That's amazing though. Art school would be amazing, but hard. I can't even imagine. I love doing art and I paint and all kinds of stuff, but I don't think I could do it in a classroom. I think I would
yeah, I
die.
think it just offered a different way to do things that allowed a
Yeah,
different part of my brain. I mean, obviously, I had to take lots of other classes too, but I think it
for
allowed some
sure.
balance for me to just have a place where I didn't have so many rules and structures versus
Yes,
a
that
structured
makes sense.
environment. So I think that was like really helpful to have that balance and do it that way, which is so exciting. So talking of all this creative projects, and I know that you're an incredibly creative person and you just shared that you've created all this beautiful integration of like art into your projects. I know that you've also been dabbling in maybe some like plant medicine, herbalism.
Yeah,
Please
that's right.
share
I
what
have a
that's all
diploma in
about.
Sure, I have a diploma in herbal medicine, actually. And right now I'm taking, a course in formulary, which is a lot of chemistry, which is fun and I love it. So yeah, I have always really been drawn to plants and herbal medicine and working with the earth itself. And it's always been like a really strong interest. And years ago, I studied aromatherapy and had been doing that for a million years. And I thought, what's like the next step, for me? And plant medicine has always been there, in my heart. And so I did a diploma in it, and now I'm working on a certificate in formulary, and I'm gonna probably take courses in that forever. I'm one of those weird people who is not happy unless I'm enrolled in a program of some kind. Like, I don't know if you can see it all there's a lot of diplomas on the wall behind me, and that's not even all of them because I finish one program and then I jump into another program and I just keep going. So yeah, it's something that I've always felt really drawn to and connected to, and learning about it and learning about the history of it especially has just been so amazing. I feel that the knowledge in that world is hundreds and hundreds of years old, and some of it for most of that time was oral tradition that was just talked about. And I just think there's something beautiful to being a recipient of a lineage like that. I think it's very cool.
Wow, I love that. I'm personally very drawn to that as well. And, I come from a land where like Ayurveda and like plant medicine and herbs is like so big. And I was literally just having this conversation over the weekend because I like have my little kit that I carry
Yeah.
with me. And they're like, "Oh, what are you making?" I'm like, "Oh, this is just some oregano seed tea." It's like, "Oh, well, what is this?" "Oh, it's like cumin tea." They're like, "Oh, well, what is this stuff?" So it's so amazing because in some sense, the way that I grew up, my mom didn't really use any like traditional medicine, right? It was more
Yeah.
of this because this is what's been handed down in our families, homeopathic medicine and, using Ayurveda, and so
Yeah.
that's all I've known. And I always love that. It's like, what can I use that's natural, that can support me? And so I've noticed that I've been leaning more and more in that direction. So there is this deep desire. So I'm very inspired by what you're sharing because I definitely want to, dive deeper into it and create things, and not just for me to use, but for others also. And I do feel that there's something that's opened up very much so in the past, even a couple of years of it now, where people are much more open. It's almost like all of this stuff that we were practicing, like, maybe hundreds of years ago, is now coming back and being like, yeah, we've tried all these different ways, and no way is wrong. You have to find what works for
Yeah.
you. But I think a lot of
Totally.
people have tried a lot of, maybe, let's just say, traditional medicine,
Mm.
and they're not being able to find what they're looking for. And so they're open to say, listen, I've tried this, I've tried that. What else is there? And I think this kind of information is really something that people are looking for. So I think it's really exciting that you're kind of, jumping in, or you have jumped in, and there's much more fun that you're going to create with it. And again, who knows what you're going to create out of that? Because I definitely see you as like, I'm the same way. It's like I'm an eternal student. It's like,
Yes.
what looks exciting to me, okay, I'm gonna like start exploring that and diving into that and then seeing where that like leads me or navigates. So
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. And I think people are more open to it now, than they have been for a long time. And I think that's a beautiful thing because, can herbal medicine fix everything? Of course not. Are there certain things that are much better handled with like chemicals in a hospital, like medications? Of course, there I think everything has its place. But what I love about herbal medicine is that it can support us, right? Even when we're getting conventional allopathic treatment of some kind, it can still support us as we go through that. And I think that that is such a beautiful thing. And, I believe that these plants and these medicines, like they want to help us. It is, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I was always one of those people that felt bad even for pulling a weed out of the garden, right? Like just felt so guilty because I killed it, a living thing, to the point where a few years ago I almost made a second garden just for the weeds, so I could just pull them out of the herb garden and then transplant them into the weed garden. And then I saw myself, but I realized in that process, that these medicines also choose us. They choose us. And I'll tell you, at the beginning of the pandemic, out of nowhere, yarrow started growing like crazy in my garden. And yarrow is all for like immune system and lung support and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was just crazy. The plants that started showing up in my backyard and my front yard were all in alignment with what we would be needing. And they had not grown there before. So it was just very cool. I think the medicines choose us as well.
I love that. So was that kind of when your inspiration started to kind of dig deeper, or have you always had the fascination and you just then had the time to really put some attention to it?
Exactly. Yeah. The fascination had always been there. In fact, the program that I took, I had wanted to take it for almost a decade before I did. And then yeah, everything just kind of lined up for it. And I, just thought, you know what? Like all of a sudden this money fell into my lap because, school's not and it's not cheap. And I thought, I'm just gonna do it. And you know what? Everything else will just hopefully work out. Like this is all the money I have, but I'm going to spend it on this and pray to the universe that I get some more if I need it. And that's, thankfully what happened. But yeah, and it was an immediate, like I fell in love with it so immediately. The second my textbooks arrived and the second I started, taking these courses, I was just so hooked. Like it was in within seconds, I was hooked on it. It was really cool. It felt like I was arriving at something that had already been there, like a coming home to myself almost.
I love that so much because this is my belief, that we all have had many different multidimensional lives and we have
Yeah.
done many things. And it's almost this remembering of certain aspects of ourselves that we probably have been like, like, especially for us that are really into it, like, we were probably like shamans or like plant healers or medicine men, women, so I think that's another clue to me when something interests and excites me that much. It's like, oh, there's
Yeah.
definitely some connection there. And we all get to choose. Do you want to explore it? Do you not want to explore it? And it's all
Yeah, totally.
all great. It's all great, but it's nice to have that element of being really excited and wanting to like dive into something. So I too will be definitely indulging, maybe not to the degree that you are, but I will definitely be doing my little dabbling because it is something that I feel very connected to. And I just always feel like, nature is so incredible and just has provided so many
Hmm.
natural resources and medicine, and it's just up to us to like notice and say, wow, look at all of these things. I mean, even something simple, right? Like I tell people, it doesn't have to be a whole big thing. You could just
Yeah.
have like a lemon balm plant in your home. You could have
Hmm.
basil, like something that you are nurturing, that you are being able to also like, you know enjoy, but you're also being able to like actually be close to it, be in its energy. Like you can do
Yes.
really simple things all the way to like, if you wanted to create products, do other things. So I just love that there's so much span of how much you want to dip in and out of any of these things.
Me too. And I think one thing that a lot of us forget, and some of us remember later, is like we are a part of nature. We're not living on the earth. We are of the earth. And I think one thing that we know about nature is how resilient it is. And it's resilient because it takes care of itself. Is when we're not getting in the way of that. And so I think that um because nature takes care of itself and we are of nature, we are of the earth, it takes care of us too. I think it's a very symbiotic and beautiful thing.
I couldn't agree more with that. So I wanted to ask you, I know you do so many different things. Is there something you want to share in terms of like what you're up to these days or what's really exciting you? What's on the path right
Sure.
now? Share.
I think like everyone else, I wake up and about 9:30 in the morning, I have a nervous breakdown followed by a headache, and then I have lunch, and then I spend the rest of the day trying to figure out how I'm going to help myself in the world. I think that's really it. But I guess, at a overarching level, working on events that I have going on. So I'm doing these psychic night events in person here in Ottawa, but also online, meditation and messages night. I've got two books on the go that I'm writing. One of them is a story, and the other one is similar to the first book that I put out. And just hanging out with animals and trying to help people and get through like everybody else. Not anything crazy exciting, I'll be totally honest.
That sounds pretty exciting, Matthew. And I love that you, like I said, you always kind of share exactly where you're at. And it's true. It's like, we go through a gamut of things every single day, right? And so
Yeah,
I think the whole thing is to, like you said, to just embrace and to just try to stay as present as possible in each moment,
exactly.
to just allow things. I think sometimes we're so busy trying to control. It's like, but why am I feeling this way? Like I should feel like this and I should be like
Yeah.
that. It's like, just honor wherever you are.
Yeah.
It's okay. And it's also
100%.
to remember that it's not permanent. It's that moment or moments or
Yes.
even an hour, and then you'll be feeling something else. But I think it's also important to say that, there are lots of beautiful tools and resources. You've personally shared a bunch that you've created, so, there's no shortage of things that are available to us if we choose and
Mm.
just step in and look around. So I'm really grateful that you have also done that. and just, joyfully created things and put out into the universe for people to enjoy. And I know you have an incredibly active community, and I just love, like, whenever I'm able to like pop in to see how much love and support there is both ways, right? Like you for them and them for you and all of that. And so it's just really, really powerful and very, very beautiful to see that. So I also want to remind everybody that all of Matthew's information is going to be in the bio section everywhere that this gets posted. So please look him up and connect with him and check out all the amazing things that he's up to. And I just truly see you as such an inspiration and just putting out so much beautiful love energy into the world. And I'm personally inspired by it. So
Oh, thank
very,
you.
very grateful for that.
I appreciate that. And you know what? I feel so lucky to have all the amazing people in the social media community. I mean, when I look at other pages, I see all these trolls and people yelling at each other in comments. And at least up to now, knock on wood, like I haven't really had that. And I think it's because, I'm in the business of collecting amazing friends, really is what it comes down to. And I happen to be really good at gathering amazing human beings together and developing, this really cool support system almost is what it is. And seeing people in the comments supporting people that they've never met, will look, most likely never meet. And just seeing all of that flow between people, I mean, it's just mind blowing to me how beautiful that is. And I think that those kind moments are what I just love the most about our world. And I get to see those kind moments pretty much every single day on my Facebook page, and I'm so grateful. So, come hang out with us. Come hang out with us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, what's beautiful too, in what you're saying, Matthew, it's, your community is kind of a reflection of what you've created, right? So the energy that you're putting into it is what you're seeing. Because if you are putting in there that sense of like community and love, and also I think just this very, I shared this before, like you really share like all the moments that are happening, right?
Mhm.
And they're not always good. They're not
No,
always, happy moments. And I think that's another thing that actually really connects the community, because then it opens up the space for them to share and to feel like,
exactly.
wow, I'm not going to be judged. I'm actually going to be supported and loved. And God knows who's going to present another resource to me and say, hey, why don't you check out this? This helped me. So it's almost like the community itself starts to like get in a place where they're supporting each other in a way that just
Yeah.
kind of it keeps expanding the community. So it's really
Well,
powerful.
that's exactly it. And I think it really did start when I couldn't hide my problems anymore. Like, because up to that, was, I think there was about 2,000 people on my page when I was pretending that I was, life was grand and it wasn't. Um, Once I started letting those walls down, like it brought a lot of awesome people in. And for the exact reason that you're saying, like I think it gave people permission to show up as they are. And years ago, especially when I was starting with all of these like big challenges, I kind of had this moment. I remember it very well. I was in the shower and I was thinking about, life like we all do. I was probably fighting with somebody in my head in the shower, like everyone does. And um, and I had this moment where I was like, I'm going to take, because I was angry. I thought I'm going to take all of the good stuff that happens to me in my life, and I'm going to take all of the crappy stuff that happens to me in my life, and I'm going to use it, all of it, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to live uncomfortably transparently, like, vulnerable to the point where it's uncomfortable sometimes, and it can be. But I'm going to, make sure this hardship doesn't get one over on me. And I thought, well, the only way to make sure it doesn't win is to use it for good and to use it to help other people. And that's that shower fight with the universe in that, in that moment, I think is what laid the groundwork for all of this to happen. I think sometimes we get our moments of clarity when we're sitting in stillness and when we are receptive. And I think sometimes we get our moments in clarity when we are screaming at the sky, begging for things to change for the better. And then this stillness shows up, or this moment shows up where we can feel the universe answering us through our own self. And that's what happened that day in that shower for me. And I got out of the shower and I think I did a Facebook Live and I opened up a little bit more. And of course, I was really nervous. I was afraid of judgment for sure. And then, over time, I realized like there's not one person on this planet who has got an easy life, not one. And so I'm just going to show all of that and let people know that they're safe to show up as they are.
Yeah, that's so powerful, Matthew. And that's exactly it. And I will say the other component is, you are somebody who's deep into your craft. You've been, doing your work and, you have large audiences. You're doing many things. And
Mm.
sometimes I think people who are kind of earlier on in their journey are going to put you on a pedestal and say, oh,
God, I hope not.
everything in Matthew's life must be perfect. It must be great.
Yeah.
Like, all of these things. So, that's another reason why I'm saying like it's so important that what you're showing is like, no, I'm just like you. I'm
Yeah.
literally just like you.
And that is a definite thing. Like I've definitely had people that thought that either I was rolling in money, which has never been the case, or that my life was all together, or I couldn't possibly experience grief because I'm a medium, or all of these things. And I think it did, like, letting those walls down, I think it really did show people that actually no, nobody is excused from hardship. Nobody on this planet is excused from hardship. Um, and I think when we can really embrace the hard things, like in the moment that we're going through them, but also after in our processing of them, I think that we can be given a gift that is profoundly powerful. Anybody who experiences trauma or, really hard things, I think that we're given this present from the universe that allows us to see the subtle beauties within the world around us. There's a movie about that entire thing called Collateral Beauty. And I urge people to watch it if they want to learn more about that. It's a great movie with like Helen Mirren and Will Smith and Keira Knightley and Edward Norton and all Kate Winslet. But it's all about that, the way that there's always a trade-off with loss or grief or whatever. And that trade-off is being able to see beauty that nobody else can see. And I think that's true for all of us who've gone through something. I don't know where I was going with that. I was on a tangent. Probably
Hey,
off in left field again.
listen, this is the beauty of this podcast. I don't plan anything. It's like we just go with the
Perfect.
natural flow. So it's like whatever's showing up is showing up. And it's truly what you said. It's about embracing all of it, right? Like
Yeah,
I
all of it.
don't want this to be so curated that, I want you to show up exactly the way you are. And
Yeah,
very much what you're sharing, Matthew, about this piece of, that is the reason for me to do this podcast too, because sometimes people will say, oh, healers and coaches, but that's not me. I'm like, yeah, but
mhm.
the reason I'm having people come is because they're going to share with you that they're exactly like you. They're just in a
Totally.
different part of their journey, but they
Totally.
are going to be authentic and transparent. It's like, hey, trust me, I know where you're at. I am
Yeah.
there. I have been there, and I'm just trying to show you that
Still there
still
most
there.
of the time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
And I think that's so important because I think that's one of the things that I experienced when I was, during the pandemic, all of that stuff happened. I was in my dark night of the soul journey thinking, I'm like, oh my God, I don't have one person that I can talk to who
Yeah.
could understand what I'm going through. I mean, I was completely alone. Now, of
Yeah.
course, I didn't realize that that is part of the process, that you are meant
It
to be
is.
alone for a
Yeah.
certain amount of time so
It
that you
is.
can go inside instead of the external stimulation. But,
Yeah.
once I came out, and thank God, even though there are days when I don't love social media, at that time I was like, thank you, social media. Because of social media, slowly when I was ready, I was coming on Facebook and finding people like you and Michael and Windwalker, so many people, right? And each one of you offered something to me by being authentic, by being vulnerable, by saying, listen, you are not alone. You are
Yeah.
not alone. And it helped me so much. And literally was the inspiration for this podcast to say, because I realized that I received the support and I was able to navigate through my journey, I recognize that there's got to be hundreds and thousands of people who feel like they're alone, that there is no
Millions of
support,
people.
right? Or that they're in communities or places where they can't even talk about this stuff because it's not acceptable.
Oh, it's so true, and it's so common, and I'm so glad that you created this podcast. This has been a lot of fun talking to you. I really
Thank
enjoyed it a whole
you.
lot.
Thank you so much. This has been just beautiful. And you've been on my mind to like reach out to you, but sometimes I'm like, oh, Matthew's just so busy. I'll connect with him when I
I'll
can.
always make time for cool people like you doing cool
Oh,
things like this.
thank you
No,
so
truly.
much. And
Yeah, I love it.
like in a blink of an eye, like honestly, Matthew, when I started, and just like Michael was like my premiere episode,
Yeah, you
and
told me that.
he and I were just like, it's like, let's just hold hands together and we'll jump off the cliff together into the
Aw,
universe. It was just so beautiful, and I can't believe that it's been a year already. Like
it's
I'm just
amazing.
as surprised and like, what? It's been a year, but it's been so incredible because just how we've been sharing earlier is like this is purely just from my heart to share because I know that even though I don't always understand it and I'm not like attached to anything, I'm just like, if it can just help one person to listen to someone's story and say, I found myself in that story, or there's some resource that you offered that we talked about that someone could like say, oh my God, I'm going to get that book, or you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just like you never know what's going to offer something to someone. So it's just about putting all this information out there with that intention of love and support. And you just don't know who it's going to touch. And it's not even important sometimes. I don't need to know what that is.
Yeah.
I just have to trust that if I'm in alignment and I'm following my path and I'm doing it truly from this genuine heart space, that the universe is going to help to like, do what it's going
Totally.
to do.
Totally it will, and I think yeah, I think you're totally right about that, and I think that we often maybe don't even realize how many people we touch or help. I know that in my mind, there's like 5 people that read my posts and like, a few people that watch my videos and that's it, in my mind, but, then I'll randomly get a message from somebody that I didn't don't you know, I they're not like somebody who comments all the time on my Facebook page, so I didn't really, see the name before, and they would just say, "Hey, thank you so much for everything you do, you really got me through the last month or the last year or whatever." And that, I mean, like, I feel like the luckiest person in the world because I literally have a job where almost every day somebody says thank you for something. And that is so unusual in our world. Not many people get to start their workday with emails of thanks and gratitude. So, I feel very blessed, very blessed.
Indeed. But, at the end of the day, you created that, Matthew. You created that energy. You've created your platforms. You've created that space for people to feel that way. And, it's almost like imagine you woke up and you're like, I don't know. And then you look at your social media, and like someone writes this beautiful post. It just shifts your entire energy.
Oh, it totally does. And that's always my hope for what I can bring to other people, right? Is like, whenever whatever they need will show up somehow for them. Whether it's on my page or not, I don't really care. I just want them to find what they need in their path to bring them to the next step. Because sometimes life is um year by year, sometimes it's hour by hour, and sometimes it's literally getting through to the next minute with holding yourself together. And I think, my hope is that, regardless of what anybody's going through, that they'll be brought from the universe in whatever way it's meant to be, what will bring them through to that next minute or hour or year. That's always my
Yes.
hope.
Absolutely. And sometimes, I remind myself because I remember how it was for me that I didn't even know that I was being guided, right? I'm just like, oh, how
Yeah,
did I land up here? And it's like, trust that you have love and support, whether it's coming from the other side. Some people don't even believe in some of those things, but just know
mm,
that the support is there. And sometimes it's okay to ask and just say, hey, can you
totally.
just show me? Can you just show me what I need to see where I can get support? And then there's trust that you will be guided and led. And it's a great thing to ask, like definitely ask.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when we think of even things like prayer, right? I have always thought that that's really helping us to align with blessings that are probably coming anyway, but it gets us out of our own way enough to receive them. I think there's no harm in asking the universe for anything that you want, anything. And being open to receiving it. And I think that's a beautiful thing about our world. I think we get surprised constantly, and I think that can be really great, even sometimes when it's not so great in the moment. we can work with it and turn it into something great if we want to.
Exactly. I love that so much. Well, it's been so much fun and such a delight to connect with you today, Matthew, and to
Likewise.
have my audience learn more about you and what beautiful stuff that you're putting out into the universe. And just reminding everyone that all of Matthew's information will be in the bio section. So please definitely look him up, connect with him, and find all the beautiful things that he's up to. So, Matthew, we're kind of coming to the closing of this show, but I wanted to invite you, if it feels good to you, to pull a card, share a message for the collective. That would be incredible.
Sure. Let me take a deep breath and we'll see what comes up. So the message that I'm getting is, really more about being present. I think understanding that right where you are is good enough, for your relationship with the universe around you, the world around you, with yourself, and understanding that you don't have to be a certain way to receive good things. You don't have to, be your own idea of success in order to receive things. You can receive goodness and kindness and love from the universe exactly where you are right now, exactly who you are. So maybe just like cut out the idea of putting gatekeepers on your own joy and happiness. Don't tell yourself, I'll be happy when. Don't gatekeep your own good feelings and good things and your own blessings. Accept them where you are. That's the message. Accept good things where you
Wow.
are.
I love that so much. What a beautiful and powerful message and reminder for all of us. And thank you again, Matthew. This has been so
My pleasure.
amazing
Thank
and
you.
so
I've had a
fun.
great time. Yeah, anytime. I would love to come back and hang out with you again.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And I just want to thank my beautiful, amazing audience that tunes in. And I'm so grateful for you. And I hope that you receive some beautiful messages, including this last bonus message. And I can't wait to connect with each of you on the next episode.